This only happens about once or twice a year, and I happen to live half a kilometer above sea level, so it's more likely to happen to me. And it's absolutely glorious. I love waking up, and it feels like I'm in a little ski cabin on top of a mountain. And it's crazy because you can look right down and you can see the bottom half of the island has no snow, just where I am. This is my driveway, which is also the ski run, by the way. Last year when this happened, I skied all the way down my driveway. So anyways, this video though is about, guess who? Trudeau. Now you're not gonna believe this. Actually, most of you probably will believe this, but there's these anti-government, anti-COVID-19 lockdown protests in China right now. And they're massive. And some of them are getting violent. And what does Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau have to say about these protesters?
Canada, as you know, has a very, very large Chinese-Canadian community, and we have had long ties across the Pacific to China and other countries, and it means we're watching very, very closely. Obviously, it's really important that citizens be able to make themselves heard, that they're protesting, yes, on a specific issue that touches on so many others of government control, of authoritarian states.
Tell me he didn't just say that.
We, of course, stand with those protesters. We know how important it is for people to express themselves, for journalists to be able to do their jobs, and we're going to continue to consistently stand up for human rights and the things that people in China and people all around the world are continuing to fight for.
You can't make this up.
But what about Canadian protesters fighting against government overreach?
Illegal blockades are hurting Canadians, whether they're in Ottawa, Windsor, Coutts, or Emerson. They're endangering jobs, they're threats to our economy and to public safety. The blockades are hurting small businesses and neighborhoods. They're impacting trade, supply chains, and manufacturing. This morning, I had a direct call with President Biden to talk about our shared challenges at the border. We discussed the American and indeed global influences on the protest, the US-based flooding of the 911 phone lines in Ottawa, the presence of US citizens in the blockades, and the impact of foreign money to fund this illegal activity.
CSIS confirmed that there was no foreign funding behind the convoy, that foreign actors were not behind the convoy, that this was an organic grassroots movement, and more importantly, a domestic grassroots movement.
But lots of big scary bouncy castles, and even a hot tub.
Oh my God!
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
I want to remind everyone that politicians don't direct police in a democratic society. But I can assure you, everything is on the table because this unlawful activity has to end, and it will end. Government control of authoritarian states.
Government control of authoritarian states.
If you joined the protests because you're tired of COVID, you now need to understand that you are breaking laws. We've heard your frustration with COVID.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
We've heard you. It's time to go home now.
Prime Minister of Canada, the way he's behaving right now, he's exactly like a tyrant, like a dictator.
We, of course, stand with those protesters.
I just can't take this.
If you joined the protests because you're tired of COVID,
Okay, and if I may interject there, Mr. Trudeau, it's not because people were sick and tired of COVID. I love how you tried to frame the narrative with that statement. You know people were sick and tired of you and your government and the overreach happening. They weren't sick and tired of COVID. It has nothing to do with the virus. It had everything to do with you and your administration. So quit trying to spin the narrative. You are the king of disinformation.
The exercise of freedom is preconditional upon the accessibility of truth. And where this current bunch of bandits is really closing in, it is not just bringing in the Emergency Act, but it is bringing in legislation to monitor, control, and interfere with the dissemination of information and news, and simultaneously it is paying $500 million to some of the laziest institutions on the face of this earth. This government is tangling truth and freedom in the same wire. So when Tamar led her troops, and you may call them that, when she led her troops that began on an ancillary or on a particular issue, vaccination mandates as they impacted upon truckers. Even within 2 days, I realized this, it metastasized, to use your own word. It expanded, it exfoliated into a representative voice for the claustrophobic feeling that so many Canadians have been having over months and years, that in a soft, subtle, serpentine, and in some ways very insidious manner, government keeps closing and closing and closing the avenues and the altitudes in which human endeavor and human conduct and human thought can exercise themselves to the full. The significance of the convoy was that it was a challenge, but it also gave a wonderful clue. The meanness and the spitefulness and the absolute audacity of trying to claim that a few parked trucks in downtown Ottawa represented a national insurrection. That was a demonic lie.